Hello, I'm Josh Wilkinson and welcome to Chatting, presented by Made. Hello, how are you? Can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, hi, my name is Sadia Mia, and I am a little bit of everything. So I always say like my main job, my passion is public speaking. So I always refer to myself as a public speaker. But kind of the work that I do goes in three branches. So I work with a South Asian mental health charity in Rochdale called Awakening Minds, and I'm a little bit of a teacher, facilitator, and I'm their lovely bodyguard when we have events. I don't know if I'm stopping anyone. I don't think I look threatening, but I'm there like, have you registered? Have you booked? So yeah, that's quite fun. My second one, I would say, is I work in the heritage industry. So I work with Lancashire museums, and I'm all about encouraging youth participation and participation from different cultures. And my last one is I do some researchy stuff. So I'm all about using my voice as a woman of color, and a religious woman to say, actually, we need change in this, and this area, or this is great what you're doing. Let's bring it over to this industry. Um, and all of that together keeps me quite busy. And I've recently, I feel like, ventured more into the arts sector by having a job with Royal Exchange Theatre, where I am the Rochdale Community Connector.
How does it work then? So, you talk about going into working with different organizations and you're sort of like, you're self-employed in that sense that you are deciding what kind of jobs you take and where you take them and collaborating with many organizations. I suppose that brings quite a few, well, it brings freedom and it also brings maybe a little bit of, oh, I don't know what's next or what to balance. Um, with all of that in mind, what are some of the challenges to that? But also, what do you love about that?
I'd say a big challenge is, and I feel like it's sod's law, that you will be busy at every job at the same time, and then each job will be quiet at the same time. But then on the flip side, there's so much variety for me to do, which is what I realized I needed. So before I kind of got into like the arts industry and heritage industry, I actually used to work in a law firm, and it was 9 to 5, and it was the same thing every day, sat at my desk writing reports. And excluding kind of the jobs I have in the creative industry, I had never held a job more than 7 months,
Mm.
because I'd get to about 7 months and be like, what am I living for? Why was I put here on this earth? What am I doing with my life? Because it wasn't hard work. I mean, it took effort to do it, but I didn't enjoy it, and I just felt like, I'm not meeting people, I'm not making any difference whatsoever. Like, what am I doing here? This is not for me. And so I just kept quitting every 7 months, and then like moving on to another office job and being like, maybe this one will work out. Surprise, it didn't, because I needed that variety. So, none of my weeks look the same, none of my days look the same. Like today, for example, I had a meeting in the morning, and then I was free until this interview. So I just did some gaming. And then after this interview, I'm free for an hour, and then I'm off in Rochdale. And I have a meeting with the council, and we're talking about a few things, which, I get to see loads of different people, and it's almost like they get to see the different hats that I wear, and it's just fun, and it can be difficult, but there are ways to do that. So always, 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 whether it's you do this for your job or you do it for yourself, track your hours, because I feel like when you have multiple jobs, like, I might do 1 hour of one job today, and like 4 hours of another, and 3 hours of another, and that's my work day done. So I don't do like my hours all in the same day. So you run the risk of like doing way too much, because you're like, oh, I didn't quite finish this or quite that. So, it's very unlikely that any of your creative jobs are going to ask you to give like what did you do in this hour and how many hours did you do? It's
Yeah.
better for yourself, kind of almost like to have a spreadsheet or something visual, like on your wall, to just say, I did this here and this was the outcome. So organization is so key when you have different jobs.
So with all of that, what was it like for you? So my question being, did you go to college? Did you go to university? If so, what did you study? Yeah, tell me that first, and I've got another question for you.
Okay, that's fine. I always feel like kind of being creative for me came out of left field. So in high school, I was like a straight A student. And I was one of those where I didn't have to study. So I was just like, you know what, we'll just pick whatever people want me to pick because I can do it. Little did I know when you go to college, like you actually need to study to be able to get anywhere. So for college, I did A levels and I did maths, chemistry, biology, and history. History being something that I was like, I enjoy it. I'm not necessarily good at it. I enjoy it, so I want to do it. And the rest was kind of with a discussion with like my parents and my family, and they were like, well, those are what are going to get you a job. And you're good at it. You're a straight A student. Um, I was not in college. So I just feel like college for me was not a nightmare, but a nightmare. I personally didn't know like my learning style. And I figured out that I didn't actually enjoy maths, biology, and chemistry, especially not maths. I don't have a mathematical brain. Numbers and me don't get along. Please do not ask me to calculate anything because I will get it wrong. Straight away, I will get it wrong. Um, and I was having health issues as well that I didn't realize I was having. And, being a South Asian girl, like I had responsibilities at home, and it was just everything at the same time. And I finished my first year in college. Bear in mind, I was a straight A student in high school in everything that I did. I finished my first year of college with 4 U's. But what actually
Mm.
happened is clearly I didn't have an interest in those areas and I didn't find it exciting. And so it was very hard for me to actually sit down and like almost like memorize anything for it. I tried everything. I tried teaching others, which went great because they would learn it, but I still wouldn't learn it.
Oh, wow.
It was like as soon as the lesson over, I was like, I don't know what I just told you, but I know it's right because I checked the facts beforehand. Um, and so I did my kind of second year of college where I half repeated some subjects and went into the next year with some. So I was like in the middle. And then I think I came out with like 3 E's and a D. And I was like, okay, I need to do another year, which at the time was like game over for me because I was like, nobody in my family has ever had to do an extra year anywhere. I am a failure. I am not brainy. Like, I'm getting nowhere in life. But I really appreciate doing that extra year. I feel like I matured the most in that year and I kind of figured out what I wanted. Because I turned around and said, I'm not gonna do anything sciencey at university. I'm going to do history. And my parents had a full-on heart attack. They were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I like it. And they're like, so what are you gonna do with it? And I was like, nothing. I just like it, so I want to go and study it. I almost felt like I'd wasted education in a way that I went and did something I didn't enjoy and I wanted to try doing something that I enjoyed.
So, okay, so that led into history at university.
Yes.
With those sorts of I don't know, learnings, what do you take from that you can apply to the roles that you have now as a creative person, as
Yeah.
somebody that works in more of a creative field? So what sort of things are maybe more unexpected that looking back, you actually, I took some stuff from that. Is there anything?
Yeah, so it's first and foremost, like when people ask me, I'm always like, do what you enjoy. Like it doesn't matter if you're good at it or bad at it. Like if you have to do it several times over, like do what you enjoy because you're gonna put the effort in. Whereas if it's something that you absolutely hate, you're not going to. So I took that forward in my work where I feel like especially when I used to do office work, I was always a yes woman. Like, yes, I'll do this for you. Yes, I'll do that. But when I kind of got into the creative industry, I was very open and I was like, I can do this, but I prefer not to. It's not something I enjoy. So if you do allocate something like this to me, it's gonna take a while.
Mm,
So I was very open to the fact, like, for example, video editing, I can do it, but it's not something I enjoy. I find it quite fiddly. So I'm very honest with like my manager, being like, if you are gonna allocate me this, like, I need you kind of not baby me, but I need you to send me regular, like, how's it going? Any updates? So I know, like, actually I should be getting on with it rather than trying to avoid it. Whereas if it's something like, if somebody wants me to go and do a speech somewhere or like create a presentation, like I can do that in 2 minutes flat and I'm happy to do it. And
yeah.
it's one of those things where letting people like in your team know, not that you have a weakness, because I feel like nothing is ever truly a weakness, but just being open and honest that, yeah, I'm gonna need that extra support or that extra nudge.
So with all of that, you have a lot of different projects up your sleeve, a lot of different roles that you've had now. What does that look like from the beginning? So, when you go into what do you have interviews? Do you have meetings like this to secure roles? Like, what does it look like for like somebody like you that jumps from different organizations?
Well, I would say, especially for young people, so the way that kind of the government specifies young people is from like 18 to 25. And there's a lot of schemes out. So there was the Kickstart scheme, I think that's finishing now, where people are just like, we need young people, because in short, it's almost like a checkbox now, but don't be afraid almost to go just because it's a checkbox, because what you'll find is, if it's an organization that is literally just doing it because it's a checkbox or because they're getting funding for it, once you're in that role, they actually see the importance of young people in there. And I know from personal experience, I had my one of my contracts extended from 6 months to another 6 months, then to another year, because they were just like, actually, we do need a young person and we do need this input. So yeah, I would definitely say, if there's any young people initiatives out there, that's always a good place to start, especially for networking. Um, Networking is super important, especially when you're a freelancer, because sometimes projects just pop up out of nowhere. Someone might just be like, oh, well, we're doing a research project on, I don't know, on sports, for example, and we'd like an opinion of someone who fits a certain demographic, or, we've got all these people, we don't have like a woman of color, for example. And sometimes you can get it as simple as the person they're talking to and being like, oh, I know this person and she'd be perfect. I'm going to send you her details. So networking is a big one. And I find most of my project work comes from that way, from just people just knowing who I am.
You talk about networking, you talk about putting yourself in those positions and almost selling the work that you do. And what sort of things do you think employers look for, and why do you reckon you've been successful in the past, working with places like the Royal Exchange?
um and I mean this in the most like tedious way, but because I am me, the important thing when you're going for any creative job is to be authentically you. And I feel like that is something that is really encouraged and cherished in the creative industry that might not be in others. So for my theatre job, I was very honest in my interview and I was like, look, I've never been to a theatre. I don't know anything about this theatre. I don't know anything about any other theatres in the world. It's just not something I grew up with, and it's not something that's in my culture. However, you are trying to attract people who are just like me. Um, and because I was honest and because I could show, look, I have a connection to this area, and the type of person you're trying to attract is someone like me. So if me as a whole is there, then you're gonna have an easier job getting those people in. And you know, it worked because that is exactly what they needed.
It's almost like you were saying before, yes, you're working in a creative industry. Maybe if somebody looks at your CV and sees that you've done that bit of education, it's like, okay, we know that you can apply yourself. We know that you've done that. But actually, sometimes it's about all of those other skills that come with
Oh
it,
yeah.
the experience that you've had from education and from that, but also the mixture of that life experience together makes this, well, for your case, I think it, like you say, it gives you that experience, that confidence, that networking ability,
Yeah.
because you've met with a group at university. But it's also really interesting, isn't it, how sometimes we can get really worked up about our grades and stuff,
Yeah,
and it really
definitely.
is about a balance. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like I flip-flopped from my grades are so important to, oh, it's just a piece of paper, to actually I do need it. But it's I want people to know that kind of, if education doesn't work out or you don't get the grade that you want, like your life is not over. That's what I thought. I was like, I'm never gonna be hired, I'm never gonna work, I'm never gonna make money. Um, but like here I am.
What bit of advice would you give yourself, especially about looking at the point you're at now in the creative industry? And also, why is it important that we have these roles in the creative industry and that we are sharing what they mean to us?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say to myself is don't be ashamed. Art is a, whether you do it as a job or as a hobby, it's still viable. You don't have to make money from it. You can do it as something you just purely do for enjoyment. But there is benefit to doing it as either or. I think, especially in my culture growing up, it was kind of, you do things because there's a purpose, and that purpose is, to bring stability to your life, to usually to make money, which you can understand because most of our parents in South Asian culture are usually immigrants, and so they had a lot of struggle when they came here, and they don't want to see that for their kids. And I think we internalize that quite a lot as children. But yeah, I would tell her it's fine. Like I remember I used to draw flowers growing up. And I always find this so funny. My mum used to draw like aeroplanes and tanks and stuff growing up, and my dad was the one who drew all the flowers and stuff. So yeah, so I think maybe growing up and hearing that they used to be artsy and then it all disappeared from their life. I think I was thinking, that's just a normal thing that happens and that's how life is. Yeah, but I would tell her continue to pursue it, whether she wanted to do more drawing or she wanted to do more poetry or more writing. I wish she would have continued it. So yeah, definitely I would tell her, don't be ashamed, keep going. Because there's just so many benefits in being creative. And one thing that I found is I've understood myself more as a person and what I value and believe in the more I've been creative. So whether that's, doing art therapy or whether it was doing poetry or like, just allowing myself to have that space and that time to think and do an activity at the same time has been just beneficial to me. There's not been any negative side. I don't feel like I've wasted that time, which I feel like used to be the rhetoric. Like, oh, you're drawing or you're writing or you're acting something out or like you're enjoying something creative. That's a waste of time. You could be doing this, this, and this, but actually it was so fundamental to making me feel like I was grounded and that I almost like I had a purpose and I kind of know what that purpose is now.
I think that would be really useful for lots of people to hear, to listen to, and yeah, to take those bits of advice and wisdom that you've offered us today, which I think will be really useful. So, thank you so much for your time and for chatting to us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.